Hi, I'm Selena. They threw parties without me, erased my name from the family records, and told people I'd moved on. But what they really did was steal everything I helped them build. It was a Sunday afternoon in early spring. I was on my way home from a client meeting just south of Dallas, tired and ready to crash. I took a shortcut through my old neighborhood, something I hadn't done in a while, and that's when I saw it. My parents' house, the one on Sycamore Lane, with balloons tied to the mailbox and cars jammed up along both sides of the street. There was a banner stretched across the front porch, big and glossy like it had been made professionally. It read, "Celebrating Camille, 10 years of leadership at Marlowe Freight." Camille, not mom, not dad, not our family, just her. I parked a few houses down and stayed in the car. The windows were cracked, but the air felt thick. I watched from the driver's seat as people I hadn't seen in years laughed on the front lawn, sipping wine and posing for photos. They hadn't told me. No call, no message, nothing. I hadn't even known Camille was working at Marlowe again. But the part that stung the most? I wasn't surprised, not anymore. I used to think things would even out, that if I worked hard, stayed dependable, kept showing up, someone would notice. That being loyal, being helpful, would matter. But lately, it didn't feel like I was being overlooked. It felt like I was being erased. I drove away before anyone saw me. I didn't want to make a scene. I didn't even know what I'd say if I had gone up there, so I just left. Back at my apartment, I did what I always do when I'm trying to distract myself. I cleaned. I pulled out this old plastic bin from the hall closet, the one I'd been meaning to sort through for months. It was full of random stuff from over the years, school papers, faded photos, a dried-out friendship bracelet from middle school. Near the bottom, I found this small velvet pouch I hadn't seen in ages. Inside was a silver hairpin, smooth and cool in my hand. It was engraved with the letter S. My mom gave it to me for my 16th birthday. She said, "As long as you wear it, I'll always see you as strong." Back then, I believed her. I really did. It made me feel like I mattered, like she saw me now. I wasn't so sure. I slid the pin back into its pouch and tucked it under a pile of sweaters in the bottom drawer. I didn't know what to do with it yet. I wasn't ready to decide. That night, while I was reheating leftover chili, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in me said to answer. "Selena?" A man's voice. Calm. Formal. "This is Gerald Halbrook. I was your parents' estate attorney." Was. He apologized for the sudden call. Said he'd been meaning to follow up on some trust paperwork I apparently hadn't returned. My brain stalled. I hadn't received anything. He said it had been sent certified mail 3 months ago to my old apartment in Garland. "I never got anything," I told him. There was a pause. The kind that makes your stomach tighten before the bad news even lands. "Would you have time to meet in person?" he asked. "I think we need to go over a few things together." The next morning, I went to the post office to see if there had been some kind of mix-up. The clerk looked at my box history and frowned. She said my name had been temporarily removed from the forwarding system. A change of service form had been signed, digitally, by Camille. "I'm sorry," the woman said gently, pointing at the screen. The address was updated to Camille A. Royce, sole recipient. I didn't say anything. I just nodded, walked out to my car, and sat there with my ears ringing. By noon, I was sitting in Mr. Halbrook's office. He was kind, reserved. The blinds were half drawn, the room was quiet, and everything felt a little too still. "I want to be upfront with you," he said. "What I'm about to show you is based on the most recent instructions from your parents. But I believe you deserve to see it." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were updated trust documents. Legal, signed, notarized. Every property, every company share, every asset had been signed over to Camille. All of it. I stared at the pages, the names, the official stamps. My voice barely made it out. "All of it?" "I understand this is difficult," he said gently. "But I thought you'd already seen these." I shook my head. Slowly. Mr. Halbrook. In the older version, was I included? He nodded. Yes, you were co-beneficiary. That version is still on file. And unless your parents formally revoked it, it still holds some legal weight. He stood, walked over to a safe in the corner, and unlocked it with deliberate care. From inside, he pulled a thick cream envelope, sealed with a gold sticker. This, he said, placing it in front of me, was meant for you. It's dated 6 months before the newer documents. Your parents dropped it off personally. I didn't move right away. My fingers felt cold against the envelope. Why didn't I ever get this? He hesitated. Camille picked it up, the day you were supposed to, said she'd deliver it to you. Of course she did. I broke the seal and pulled out the contents. There was a letter inside and behind it a notarized trust document. Dated over a year ago, my parents' signatures in ink. Clear, unmistakable. And right there, next to the legal lines and formal language, was a sticky note in Mr. Halbrook's handwriting. For Selena. Copy retained. My chest tightened. My eyes scanned the page again and again, trying to process what I was seeing. It wasn't just a sweet letter. It was legally binding. It said I was co-owner, 50% of everything, the real estate, the company shares, even their retirement accounts. All of it signed and dated well before Camille had moved back into their house. Before the sudden family dinners I wasn't invited to. Before I started second-guessing myself, wondering if I was imagining it all. I wasn't. Mr. Halbrook stood and stepped out, giving me space. The room was silent, but not empty. That letter, it was like hearing someone finally say, "You weren't crazy. You were right." 14 months. 14 months of being ignored, cut out, made to feel small, dismissed like I was imagining things. And now, in my hands, was the proof that I'd been pushed aside on purpose. When I finally walked out of that office, I didn't feel angry. Not yet. I felt hollow. Numb. I drove home with the envelope in the passenger seat like it was alive, wire buzzing with everything they'd tried to hide. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I cried later, but not for them, for me. Later that afternoon, I drove out to my dad's shop, the same place he'd been running since I was 12. The corrugated metal siding still looked sun-bleached and dented, and the little doorbell above the entrance still gave that familiar squeak when I stepped inside. For a second, I felt like I was walking into a memory. But it didn't last. He was behind the counter, flipping through a stack of invoices. When he looked up, his face barely changed, just a small nod, no smile. "Didn't expect you today," he said. I shrugged like it didn't matter. Thought I'd say hi. The air smelled like old motor oil and hand soap. It always had. I glanced around, letting my eyes drift to the back wall where the founder's plaque hung. I'd had it made for their anniversary 10 years ago. It used to list all 4 of us, Mom, Dad, Camille, and me. I remember how proud I felt designing it, having it polished and engraved. Now it had 3 names: Camille, my father, my mother. Mine was gone. I walked closer, pretending to admire the shine. Did the plaque get updated? He didn't look up. Camille's been helping more lately. She's earned it. I bit the inside of my cheek, hard. So, erasing someone's name counts as a promotion now? He gave a shrug. You moved out. You've got your own thing going on. Right. My own thing. Like paying their mortgage, handling logistics across 5 states, showing up every time they called. But I didn't say any of that. I just nodded once, turned, and walked out before the heat rising in my throat could break loose into something I couldn't take back. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the trust papers like they were some kind of puzzle I could solve if I just read them one more time. But all I kept hearing in my head was that moment. His shrug, his indifference, that blank look like I was just some neighbor stopping by. I opened my laptop and pulled up the Dallas County Clerk's website. I typed in my parents' address, heart thudding like I was about to find out something I already knew but still hoped wasn't real. There it was. 3 months ago, the house had been legally transferred to Camille. No mention of me, no trust, no shared ownership. Just a clean handoff, quiet and official. I kept digging. Then I found another document. This one for the warehouse lot where my dad's shop sat. His share transferred to Camille. Again, no joint title, no trust record. Just her name. Clear and final. That's when I understood. Mr. Halbrook hadn't been reaching out as a courtesy. Legally, he had to notify anyone still listed on an old trust before new transfers could be finalized. They hadn't forgotten me. They had tried to erase me before the paperwork could catch up. My phone buzzed. A message from Camille. Don't make this messy. You were never meant to have it anyway. I read it twice. That line didn't sting because it was shocking. It stung because it was exactly what I'd felt for months, just never had confirmed in words. Until now. It wasn't forgetfulness. It wasn't some oversight. It was theft, calculated, quiet, and deeply personal. I didn't cry that night. Not because I wasn't hurt. I was. But I think there's a certain kind of grief that moves past tears, something colder, quieter, focused. Instead of falling apart, I opened my notebook and started writing numbers. The second mortgage I helped them pay off after the crash, $78,000, give or take. The roof repair, the emergency plumbing, the surprise tax bill in 2020. All of it. I pulled out old receipts, bank statements, even screenshots of transfer confirmations from my email. Every time I'd helped, my mom had called it a family favor. But now, with Camille collecting titles and applause, I needed more than memory. I needed proof. The next time I saw them was at Camille's charity launch. A gala, of course. It was held at a rented venue downtown. Soft lighting, expensive floral arrangements. Everyone dressed like they were waiting for a local news crew to show up. I didn't even plan to attend, but the invitation had come in the mail this time. My name spelled correctly, no fake warmth. Just protocol. When I arrived, they barely noticed me. I stayed toward the back of the room, sipping flat champagne. Watching Camille hold court like she'd been born into royalty. Hair perfect. Dress perfect. That controlled smile that never quite touched her eyes. Then she stepped up to the mic. I just want to thank everyone for supporting the Camille Royce Foundation for Women in Recovery, she said, holding her hands together like a prayer. None of this would have been possible without the generous support of my family and our estate's legacy. I felt the words hit my chest like a slow punch. Our estate. As she smiled and accepted applause, my mother dabbed her eyes with a tissue, and my dad gave a small nod like he was proud. I stood near the back exit, not speaking, not moving, just memorizing every second. Her tone, their faces. The way my name was never mentioned. After the speeches and the wine, I slipped away from the noise and into the hallway near the coat room. I needed air, space. That's when I saw it. A thick envelope sitting half-tucked in the side pocket of Camille's designer tote. It had been opened already, but something about it felt unfinished. I looked around. No one was near. I pulled it out carefully and unfolded the card inside. It was an invitation. Cream cardstock. Gold embossing. Founders Dinner. Honoring Camille Royce as sole legacy bearer of the Royce family vision. The date was next month. They weren't just rewriting the story, they were publishing it. Holding a banquet to celebrate stealing what I built. I folded it back and slid it into my purse. I didn't care if they noticed. Let them. Back at home, I couldn't sit still. My body buzzed with this energy I didn't know what to do with. So I cleaned the kitchen, wiped the counters, reorganized the silverware drawer. But the thoughts kept coming. The DUI lawyer I'd paid for after Camille's second arrest. Quietly, without judgment. The time I canceled a Christmas trip to Maui so I could help Dad replace the tires on his truck. The used Toyota I bought for Mom when she couldn't drive anymore. How she told everyone at church it was Camille's idea. Every memory came back like a blade. And I let them cut. Because they needed to. This wasn't drama, it was documentation. The next morning I woke up before my alarm. I hadn't really slept, but I didn't feel tired either. Just clear. Like something inside me had settled. Not in peace, more like purpose. I called in a personal day from work, no long explanation. Just told my manager I had some family paperwork to take care of. She didn't press. I think she could hear it in my voice. By mid-morning, I was downtown at the county courthouse, sitting in front of a dusty workstation with my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I typed in my parents' names and started combing through the records. And there it was. The lakeside property, transferred to Camille 3 months ago. A quitclaim deed, stamped, notarized, filed. But something didn't sit right. The signature. My dad's name was there, but the loops were off. The slant was wrong. It looked like his handwriting, but it didn't feel like it. I remembered how his hand used to shake a little when he signed things, especially after the stroke. And then I noticed the date. The deed had been notarized the same weekend Dad was in the hospital for his mild stroke, the one I drove him to. I had sat with him in that cold waiting room for hours, watching him drift, in and out under fluorescent lights. There was no way he signed anything that weekend. No way. I printed a copy and slid it into my folder. Back in my car, I didn't drive home. Instead, I called Mr. Ledbetter, our family's former estate attorney. He'd retired a few years ago, but I still had his number from old emails. He agreed to see me that afternoon. I think he remembered my name. Maybe he remembered the way I used to sit quietly at the corner of his office while Dad and Camille did the talking. When I walked into his study, I felt like I was 16 again, nervous, small. But he greeted me kindly, like someone who still believed in straight lines and signed documents. I laid everything out on his desk. The new deed, the trust papers, the letter from Mr. Halbrook, the notarized copy with my name still on it. He examined the deed first, then adjusted his glasses. "This signature," he said slowly, tapping the page. "It's off." I nodded. "I think it was forged." He didn't look surprised, just thoughtful. "I've seen things like this before," he said. "But what makes this more interesting is what your father set up 10 years ago." I blinked. "What do you mean?" He pulled an old file from his cabinet and opened it carefully. "Your father created a contingency trust in your name. Back then, it was just a backup plan. But if he was ever declared incapacitated, or if there was credible evidence of manipulation, financial or otherwise, that trust activates." I stared at him, trying to process. "Would that override the current will?" I asked. "If the trust is still valid and the conditions are met," he said. "Yes. It could give you legal control over a significant portion of the estate." I left his house with my hands shaking, not from fear, just the weight of it all. Back home, I scanned every page into a secure cloud folder, labeled each file, created subfolders, originals, notarized copies, recordings, Camille's text, bank transfers, property records. I named the whole thing Royce Archive. Then I backed it up on an encrypted drive and hid it in the fireproof box under my bed. I wasn't preparing for a courtroom. Not yet. But I wanted to be ready. This wasn't about revenge. It was protection. Later that night, while I was pouring a glass of water, my phone buzzed. Voicemail. Unknown number again. I played it on speaker, not really expecting much. It was my mother. "Selena, we've all moved on. Don't destroy this family. Camille's just trying to carry the legacy. Please don't make this into something it doesn't need to be." Her voice was soft, practiced, that same tone she always used when she wanted to guilt me into silence. When she needed me to stay small, stay quiet, stay useful. I stood there, staring at the wall, letting her words sit in the air for a beat before whispering back. Just to myself. "I don't want to destroy this family." I swallowed. "I just want you to stop destroying me." Sunday morning, my phone lit up with a message from Camille. "Mom wants brunch at Stone Cafe. Neutral ground. We should all just talk. Don't wear drama." I stared at it for a long time, then typed back, "I'll be there." Not because I wanted peace. I just needed to see it all laid out in front of me, to take measure of who they thought I still was, and who I'd become. Stone Cafe was polished and performative, all glass walls and overpriced lattes, the kind of place people picked not for comfort, but for optics. When I walked in, they were already seated at a round table near the window, the sunlight hitting Camille's freshly curled hair like it was staged. She stood up, smiling like we were sorority sisters at a reunion. "Selena," she said, kissing the air near my cheek. "Glad you came." I gave her a half smile and sat down. The server brought mimosas. I declined. The conversation started light. Weather, church updates, someone's new fence down the street. Camille led every topic like she was hosting a panel. Quoting scripture, humble bragging about a recent gala, dropping in words like legacy and calling. Then Mom reached over and touched my wrist. "We didn't want you burdened with all the estate stress," she said gently, her eyes soft like she was doing me a kindness. "You've always been the sensitive one." That word again, sensitive. Not thoughtful, not perceptive, just inconvenient. I set my napkin down slowly. "I may be sensitive," I said, my voice steady, "but I'm not small. Not anymore." Camille's smile faltered just a second. Just enough. I didn't wait for dessert. I stood, laid a 20 on the table for my untouched plate, and turned to leave. "You're overreacting," Camille called after me. "No one's trying to take anything from you." I stopped at the hostess stand, looked over my shoulder, and said, "Funny, that's exactly what the paperwork says." The courtroom wasn't grand. No sweeping ceilings or gold trim, just beige walls, dull carpet, and the hum of an air vent. But it might as well have been a battlefield. My parents sat together near the back, dressed in muted tones like they were confused elders caught in a misunderstanding. Camille sat 2 rows ahead, in a tailored blazer, hair pulled tight, looking like a CEO who'd just finished a TED Talk. Her expression was unreadable. I took my seat next to Narelle, the attorney I'd reached out to weeks ago. She didn't look at me, just nodded once and flipped through her paperwork with the kind of quiet confidence that didn't need performance. The judge entered. The session was called to order. After introductions, Narelle stood and played the audio. Clip. Camille's voice echoed through the speakers, laughing, joking. Then my mom's voice, lighter, almost sing-song. "She won't check. She's too soft. Just wants to be loved." Then my father's low murmur in agreement. The courtroom was still. You could almost feel the oxygen pull back. Camille shot up. That was taken out of context. The judge raised a hand. "Sit down, Ms. Royce. This court doesn't tolerate interruptions." Norrell waited a beat, then continued. She presented the forged deed, highlighting the date my father had been in the hospital. Then the analyst's report confirming the signature was not authentic. Then she handed over the file containing the original trust with my name intact. My parents didn't say a word, didn't even look my way. But I saw it. The way my mother's hands twisted in her lap. The way my father stared down at the table like he could disappear into it. Then I stood. "This," I said, holding up a final page, "is the clause they forgot." The judge took it, reading it carefully. It was from my grandfather's trust. A single paragraph. It granted me full veto power over any estate asset transfer before my 35th birthday. The judge looked up. "And when is that birthday?" "In 2 days," I said. He leaned back. "Then as of 2 days from now, no transfers may occur without your consent." Camille turned toward our parents, her voice rising but not loud. "You knew about this? Did either of you even read it?" Neither of them answered. The judge tapped his gavel once. "Effective immediately, a freeze will be placed on all transferred estate assets. This court will reopen probate records and authorize a formal investigation into the handling of family property and funds." Camille slumped in her seat. My mother reached for my father's hand. He didn't take it. I didn't feel triumphant. Felt still. Because this wasn't about winning. It was about being seen, heard, named, and this time, no one could take that from me. The gravel crunched beneath my tires as I pulled into the driveway of the house that used to belong to my grandfather. It still leaned slightly to the left, the old magnolia tree casting shade over the porch just like it always had. But this time, the keys in my hand were mine. The title deed had my name on it. No asterisk, no shared clause. Just me. I didn't feel like a winner. I wasn't arriving to gloat. I was arriving to breathe. The house still smelled faintly of cedar and something warm I couldn't name, like memory, like presence. The wood floors creaked in the same places. The light hit the kitchen tiles the way it always had in the late afternoon, and for a moment I stood there at the sink, hands resting on the counter, letting it all settle in my chest. It was quiet, but not empty. I wandered through the rooms slowly, each one holding a piece of the past. My grandfather's old ledgers still lined the study shelves. His gardening gloves hung on a nail in the garage, just where he left them. He never raised his voice, but somehow his quiet stayed loud enough to echo through every wall. The doorbell rang as I was unpacking a few things. I opened it to find Mrs. Alden, the neighbor from 2 doors down. She held a weathered envelope a bit curled at the corners. "Found this in the mail slot at the old church mailbox," she said with a soft smile. "It's for you. Looks like it's been waiting a while." My fingers recognized the handwriting before my eyes did. My grandfather's. Inside, I sat on the edge of the old armchair, the one that still creaked on the right side, and opened it with slow care. The letter was dated 5 days before he passed. His handwriting was careful, steady. "Selena, if you're reading this, the winds must have shifted. I always knew they might. People forget what's fair when fear takes over. But I've never doubted your heart. That's why I chose you. Because you protect, not possess. You speak softly, but you stand when it counts. Justice takes time, but it always knows where to land. Love always, Papa." I read it 3 times, not crying, just letting it land. It felt like a hand on my shoulder, like he'd been waiting here all along just in case I needed the reminder. Upstairs, I turned his old study into a reading room. White curtains, a shelf full of books I knew he would have loved. And on the mantel, I placed something small, a folded origami crane. The same one he helped me make when I was 9, on a rainy Sunday, with no power. He told me, "You fold hope into corners. That's your gift." That little paper crane had traveled through a lot of silence. But it lived here now, proud, still, unbent. I didn't rebuild the bridges they burned. I didn't need to. Some doors don't have to be slammed shut to stay closed. Some answers don't come with closure, just clarity. And sometimes, standing up for yourself doesn't mean shouting. It means walking away with your dignity intact. If you've ever had to choose yourself, even when it hurt, tell me. Share your story in the comments. I read everyone. And if this story found you at the right moment, subscribe. There's more, and you're not alone.